this is my preview and predictions for UFC 323. Um, I want to apologize as well for not doing anything for the last like 7 or so days. I was so ill. I haven't been that ill in ages, but anyway, the last few cards I predicted, I've been 11 fights from 15, which is pretty good. If I can keep that going, I'll be pretty happy. But there's a few fights on this card which are a bit harder to pick, so let's just see how this goes then. Um, the first one on the prelims is Nazim Sadikov versus Fares Ziam. In this fight, I'm going to back Fares Ziam. I think he wins by decision. I think I don't think it'll be particularly close. I think Fares Ziam will mix it up. I think he'll invest to the body, which will pay dividends later in the fight. Um, I think he'll be the more active fighter. I think Sadikov has a tendency to just look for big shots. He has a high guard. Sadikov has a high guard. He deflects shots well. But his last fight against Bonfim, there was holes exposed in his guard. And he won that fight by a head kick, but it was kind of a weird one. It wasn't like a head kick knockout or anything. It was like, I think his foot, like his toe, hit his eye, and it stopped it because of vision. And it wasn't a fight he looked particularly convincing in anyway. He does switch stances, which can phase certain opponents, but I think Fares Siam is he has snappy strikes. I think he's a more skilled opponent. I think he's much more technical. He's also taller. He's good at keeping range. I think all of these things will show, as the fight goes on. I think it will just get worse and worse. I think it will be a bit of a clinic from Fares Siam. I think Faresian will establish knees and jabs. He works the body well. He throws a lot of knees. He fights at a high pressure as well, which again will contribute to the later rounds for going highly in his favor. I can see Sadikov's tiring. Fereziam KO'd Frivola with a crazy knee a couple fights back as well, which is, I mean, that just shows how good his knees are. Like, I think his knees in the clinch are phenomenal, but that particular knee was a fantastic knockout. Fresiam won his last fight versus Davis by decision, and I think he's just the snappier, better fighter. And I think he'll take this home in a convincing decision. But yeah, no, I think overall being the more active fighter will definitely show later in the fight. I think it'll be a pretty easy decision for the judges to make. I think 30-27 most likely. And then the next fight on the card is Macy Barber versus Karine Silva. In this fight, I'd go with Macy Barber. Macy Barber has a record of 14-2, which is a fantastic record, especially for WMMA. She relies heavily on clinch work. She does try and stay active in the striking, though. She had a great KO over Amanda Ribas recently. It was a head kick into a flurry of shots. But Macy Barber does tend to get sloppy fast. She tires quickly. I think in a lot of these fights, I think fighters do tend to get sloppy as they tire, but she's one who's especially prone to that, which is something I would look out for. But still think she'll get the job done. Karine Silva, she walks her opponents down. She has a high parry style. She is quite a dominant presence in the cage. Um, but she did show weakness to grappling in her last fight. Gave up bad positions early versus Barbosa, and she was saved by the bell in round one, which I just don't think is a very good look going into a fight with Macy Barber, who is on a 6 fight win streak. And so I just think Macy Barber by decision. I wouldn't be surprised by a submission though. Um, I think she'll Macy Barber will control the grappling, and it'll be even enough striking match. But the dominance in the grappling will mean Macy Barber definitely gets the job done for another easy decision for the judges, to be honest. And then next on the card is Terrence McKinney versus Chris Duncan, which is a really hard fight to predict actually. Um, Terrence McKinney loves a fast start. He's very do or die. He's a bit like a glass cannon. It's like he loves to go out and put damage on opponents early, but he's also very vulnerable to taking damage early. His last fight was versus Borshev, and he literally sprinted across the cage within a minute, caught a leg kick, hopped into a guillotine, transitioned into a head and arm choke, and then back to a guillotine, finishing the fight all within about 60 seconds. He has a very exciting style. This is definitely a fight that I think people should tune into. Um, and then his fight before that, I think it was I think he also won that one by ground and pound early, round one. And then Chris Duncan had his last match was quite the opposite. He had a war with Rebecca. He's definitely the slower, stiffer fighter. He's uh, early on. There's no doubt this fight favors Terrence McKinney at least at the beginning, at the start of round one. But Chris Duncan does have heavy hands. He kind of fights like a bigger version of Dennis Seaver. Remember McGregor versus Seaver? Yeah, Dennis Seaver from that's a fair bit back now. He must be 10 years back now. He's kind of like a bigger version of Dennis Seaver. Um, he does tend to throw big shots with no setups and feints. I do think late, especially if this fight makes it later on, I do think those would still pose a problem for McKinney. I don't think, especially as the fight goes on and he tires, I think he is vulnerable to even sloppier of attacks. Chris Duncan does have surprisingly good timing though. Like if you start to shoot bad shots on him or your striking starts to get sloppy, he does time his shots well, and I think he if this fight makes it past the first round, which I think Chris Duncan may survive, I think he lands the big shots he needs on Terrence McKinney to uh, at least. I think he probably finishes him, to be honest. Later in the fight, maybe late round two, late round three. Um, Chris Duncan, he beat Vucenic as well, which isn't a fight I was happy with. I quite like Vucenic. I was hoping Jordan would do well in the UFC, but it was one of the first ever pull guard guillotines that actually was successful, and I think he's going to carry on his winning streak in this fight as well. Although one thing that has to be taken into account is Torres did finish Chris Duncan early. Um, but I think Chris Duncan has developed since then. I think he'll be able to make it out of this first round, just about. And then I think after that, McKinney tires very early. It's do or die for him in the first round. That's how it often is. And I think Chris Duncan will make it out that first round. So yeah, I think Chris Duncan finishes him by TKO, either in the second or third round. And then the next fight on the card is Grant Dawson versus Manuel Torres, which is another hard fight to predict. Um, I think I'm gonna go with Grant Dawson with a submission. He is a chinny fighter, and his last win was against a 40-year-old Diego Ferreira, which isn't a fantastic win. But he only has one loss in the UFC, which was to Bobby Green, where he got dropped badly by a jab. I mean, his chin has shown weaknesses, and could Torres take him out pretty easily? Possibly, it is possible if he lands a good shot on the chin. That could be it. And doesn't I know that this is completely irrelevant, but doesn't Grant Dawson look kind of like skinhead Bisping? He does a little bit, doesn't he? But he doesn't fight like him. That's irrelevant anyway. But Grant Dawson has fantastic entries and control. He is very open on the feet, and like when you're very open on the feet, especially on the back foot, like he is, having a bad chin is it's terrible. He's not one of the fight like you could imagine it with a fighter like Petr Yan, who protects his chin very well. He could get away with having a not so good chin. Grant Dawson's style leaves him so vulnerable to strikes and getting hit on the chin that having a bad chin is a massive, massive vulnerability. Grant Dawson also projects his strikes. He has no feint. He doesn't really utilize feints. And he has a sort of smothering grappling style. It's not the most exciting to watch, to be honest. Although he does like to go for ground and pound, so he will sometimes posture up, put his opponents in bad spots, and finish fights with ground and pound. He has shown development in his striking in recent fights, but like a lot of these fighters who develop their striking, when they've got a clear weakness in the striking, they kind of work on flashy stuff. Like you see him throwing wheel kicks and things like that. It's kind of like I feel like sometimes it's overcompensating. Like they're like, oh, people don't think I strike well, so I'm gonna develop a wheel kick and stuff like that. But it's more like they'd be better off getting a solid jab and a low kick, because that will help them with getting to the ground and wrestling, and it will give people a much tougher time on the feet. Because, like, how often does a wheel kick land flush and do damage? It is something for their opponent to worry about, but most people would be much more worried about a stiff jab um, than a wheel kick. You can use that throughout the fight without expending energy. But yeah, I think Torres. Um, I think he has a high pressure style. He's very aggressive in the clinch. Um, he pieced up. He was pieced up early by Bahamondes, and lost by KO in his last fight, which is obviously never a good look. I think that was on the. I think that might have been on the. Was that on the Sphere? Um, and then before that, he had an early. He was the one who beat Duncan with an early submission. But I think his grappling is good, but it's not the same level as Grant Dawson. I think Grant Dawson will just display levels in the grappling department, and I don't see the fight spending that much time on the feet. But if it does, it will favor Manuel Torres. So yeah, that's the prediction. Grant Dawson, win by submission, as long as he doesn't get finished early. So which I don't think he will. So yeah, and then to open the main card is um, Jan Blachowicz versus Bogdan Guskov. For this one, I would go with Jan by decision. I just think his experience. He has a great chin, but his experience and power will allow him to negate most of Guskov's attacks. I think Guskov is too. This is too early for him. I don't think he's ready for this matchup at all. He has been very active. Will be his fifth fight in the last 2 years, which wouldn't have been active years past. But nowadays, that's a pretty active fighter. He TKO'd Krylov recently, but he was getting beaten by Krylov fairly well early on. He also has his hands down a lot. Um, I think Jan could make him pay with that. I think he's smart enough to, but the speed won't allow Jan to make him pay in a way that I would want him to. I still think Jan will win the fight, but I think certain little holes like that, Bogdan Guskov may be able to get away with them. Um, and Guskov also seeks big shots. He's good at finding them, but he doesn't set them up well. It's not like he's jabbing, feinting, and all of this. He just kind of sits and waits for his big shot, an opening for his big shots. Not, but he does manage to find them. But it's not an effective. If you don't find those big shots, or if you find them very infrequently, and it goes to a decision, you will lose. And if you're not landing those big shots, and you're not putting anything else up, it's hard to make your opponent respect you. And I think Jan will earn Guskov's respect early on with his power, with his leg kicks, and I don't think Jan will respect Guskov back really. I don't think Guskov will be able to earn his respect, and I see Jan walking him down in a kind of boring, slowish fight, where Jan just clearly does more damage and negates Guskov's finishing potential, and wins a convincing decision. Yeah. Um, but yeah, no, Guskov is very accurate, but I think Jan is too experienced for that. I mean, even when you watch Jan, it was years ago now, but when you watched his fight against Adesanya on the feet, he was at minimum, holding his own against Adesanya. And I just think Guskov isn't even half the striker Adesanya is, technically. And I don't see Guskov getting the knockout either. I think Jan he definitely has a solid chin. He is getting up there in age. He might be 40 now, which means that his chin may be starting to deteriorate. But unless it's gone through massive deterioration, and unless his fight IQ has gone down substantially, I think Jan wins, even though he has been very inactive recently. He's since 2022. He's only had two losses, both of which are controversial, but or one more than the other. But I think Jan to win by decision um, is a pretty safe bet on that fight. Um, Next on the card is Cejudo versus Talbot. Cejudo is 39 now, which is it's rough in the lower weight divisions. It is very hard to be over 35 and get away with it, let alone 39. But I think Cejudo, he's still, because of it, he is small for this division, he'll still be fast, and at least I'd say as fast as Payton Talbot. So he will be able to keep up. It's just, will he be able to negate the distance? And I think he will. I think Cejudo will probably win by decision. I think he'll be able to close distance effectively. He'll be able to get his strikes off. He'll be able to mix in. I don't think he'll hold Talbot down for any extended period of time, but I think he will get him down. I think he'll be able to show him looks. I think he'll be able to mix up the striking and a bit of grappling, hold him up against the cage. And I think in that space, in between striking and grappling, in the clinch, when the clinch is breaking, going into the clinch, I think Henry Cejudo will get off effective shots and just deal more damage to Talbot in that. I think, I think Cejudo will. He'll be the much smaller fighter. There's no doubt, but I don't think I think Cejudo will be able to read Payton Talbot's jab well enough. I don't think Payton Talbot has an especially good jab. He has a very good right hand, but he doesn't use his jab well enough, often enough, and he overcommits on his jab. Payton Talbot kind of steps into his jab. He kind of sinks into it. He doesn't really flick his jab out or use different types of jab. He just has one jab that he sometimes overcommits to. And I don't trust him to land that right hand on Henry Cejudo and take him out. Cejudo's got a phenomenal chin and is very good at negating his opponent's best shots. Talbot does have good pressure and ring presence, but I think a fighter with a fight IQ like Henry will be able to negate that pretty easily. I think Henry will be able to keep his back off the cage, whether that's with shooting takedowns or moving in with strikes. Henry has that weird like herky jerky style where he's like his head's back and his hands are forward. I think it will be very hard for Payton Talbot to land clean shots on Henry Cejudo to the chin. I could see him having an effective body kick and working the body well in this fight. I think that is an area where you can get at Cejudo because he likes to lean his head back, but the body's still there to be hit. But I just don't think. I think there's from Payton Talbot lost the fight before his last one. He then won the next one, but he showed an advancement in grappling, not to where he'll be the same level as Henry Cejudo, but his striking didn't look phenomenal in that match. If anything, the last fight he won based on his grappling skill rather than his striking. So I don't think that's a good. I think if you want to win a fight like this by striking, you want to have beaten your last opponent pretty convincingly on the feet, and he didn't look that convincing. So I'm definitely gonna go with Cejudo to win by decision. I think this is a pretty safe choice. I wouldn't trust Payton Talbot to get a KO, and I think over the course of this fight, Henry's experience and fight IQ will make it pretty hard for him to lose a decision. But it'll be very interesting to see if Payton Talbot can create a smart game plan to beat Cejudo in any way, even if he beats him by decision, or if he can get a KO over him, that would be a massive win. But I don't even think Payton has particularly earned this shot. But when you're given a shot, it's just about what you do with it. So yeah. And then next up on the card after this one, is Moreno versus Tyra. This fight is, I find this one pretty hard to predict. I think if it was 5 rounds, I might favor Moreno, but I think that Tyra will win this over 3 rounds. He's Tyra is a fantastic fighter. His right hand, I'm a massive fan of his right hand. He has one of those. It's kind of like an inevitable shot. One of the shots where people know it's coming. He even says it's coming. Like in his last fight, versus Park, he was telling everyone before the fight Park wouldn't be able to deal with his right hand. And he went out there and just immediately landed 2 right hands straight to the side of the head. Bang! Stepped in again. Bang! Um, and then dived straight on top of him. Nearly got the finish and then got him out there in the second round grappling anyway. His grappling is phenomenal. His striking is very good. And like I said, that right hand is just a fantastic weapon to have. Um, Tyra also has great takedown entries. He mixes his striking with the takedowns very well. Like his feints look sometimes like you don't know whether that could be a takedown or whether that could have been a strike. Um, he's one of the best around at mixing it up. Definitely one of the most skilled up and coming fighters for sure. But then, like Moreno, you also have to say he is getting older now. He must be slowing down a touch. But Moreno, his last 2 bouts, he's had wins. One versus Urseg, which is a massive win. Albazi, the other one. Um, he has a hunched over sort of it's weird. It's hunched over, but it's dynamic. It's very like Mexican boxing sort of stance, but for MMA, and he has adopted it well because he it's a style that's traditionally heavy on the front leg, but he doesn't seem to suffer too much with things that people who are heavy on the front leg suffer with, like poor takedown defense. He has great takedown defense, but I do think Tyra will still manage to get him down though. I think Tyron will probably get him down early. I think there's a solid chance he drops him as well because Moreno likes to parry a lot of shots. He likes to swing overhands. I can see that Tyra right hand finding a way home. And I think if he drops him, or even just gets him down, or Tyra gets Moreno down early on and locks up a body triangle, it's something that's very hard to get out of. And I think Tyra could submit him. But I think at least the first 2 rounds, I see Tyra getting him down for a decent portion, and then that's already the decision won. If you have him down for a decent portion of time, you're showing submission threats, you're throwing ground and pound. That's pretty much over a 3 round fight. You've pretty much won it there. Moreno does have phenomenal scrambles, but I think with the way he stands heavy on that front leg, I think Tyra will be able to. I mean, he'll be able to land his shots, his right hand, get enough damage off on the feet, and I also think he'll be able to implement his wrestling enough to win a decision by the judges' scorecards. But yeah, no, Moreno does have a great chin and recovery, so I don't think he will be getting TKO'd. And also, you have to say about Moreno, I once bumped into Moreno in London. It was for one of the first UFC events back in London, and he is like the nicest guy ever. Like he's someone I would struggle to ever root against, but I do think Tyra is going to get this one done, and the UFC definitely want Tyra to get it done. I'd say I think they want someone from Japan, and I think they need young and up and coming fighters in the divisions to get through because all of the champions now and like the people who are high ranked who people go to watch in the UFC, the names, they are getting older, so the UFC needs stars like this. Moreno also does have a reactive style. He kind of stands there, pauses, and then when people throw a jab, he'll throw an overhand, he'll react to shots. He kind of waits for his opponent, and I think that will suit Tyra. I think if Tyra can get in the first shot, I think if he can start working off of these Moreno reactions, I think if he can get Moreno biting on his feints, a lot of the time Moreno will swing big, miss. It will leave opportunities for takedowns, taking the back, um, openings for that right hand. So yeah, I think Tyra, um, a decision over the course of 3 rounds. And then the first of the title fights is Pantoja versus Van. This is a interesting fight. Pantoja is 35, which is very old, especially for flyweight. I mean, normally flyweight fighters, even they struggle past that when they're 30 because speed is so key in this division. Everyone's so light. But Pantoja is on an 8 fight win streak with huge names on his record. Finishes in his last 2 bouts. Previously, before that, he was getting a lot of decisions, but his last two against Kai Kara France and Asakura were finishes. The Asakura one probably doesn't count as much. He has not been the fighter that the UFC expected him to be. Kara France, I don't know. I don't know how much to take from that one. I mean, Kara France beaten by Moreno. He's a weird fighter. It's hard to judge anything based on that. But he dominated Kara France in both the grappling and stand up. Pantoja has crazy strength and technique on the ground. He has great combinations and ends them very well in kicks. Like you'll see him sprinting with his combinations, which can be sloppy and can get him caught. And I think Van will catch him at some point in this fight. Maybe drop him or whatever when he's sprinting in. But when Pantoja sprints in with these, he always ends them with a kick, whether he will dig to the leg or dig to the body, and he whips his full momentum into it. And he deals a lot of damage to his opponents like this, and he gets them on the back foot, and he tends to do it a lot early in the round. Like when Pantoja opens up a round, he comes out with high energy. It's because it's a very good tactic actually, because judges kind of remember the start and the end of the round. If you can dominate the start and the end of the round, normally in a judge's eyes, that's the significant portion of their memory. That's kind of the times you tactically want to dominate, and he always comes out blazing. He does tire towards the end of the round, which is when you have to take advantage. I think other fighters have been not so good at that. Like when Pantoja opens up, you kind of have to defend, and then when Pantoja starts resting, that's when you need to take advantage. And I think Van will. I think Van can also catch him coming in, but I don't think Van will do it effectively enough because Pantoja will dominate the grappling. Van is 24. He hasn't been training MMA for even a third of the time Pantoja has. Pantoja is just going to have a complete advantage in grappling. I think he's going to get Van down, and when it's on the ground, Van is going to be in a world of trouble. I think Van is a fantastic fighter. 5 fight win streak. Last bout versus Royval. What a fight. Van is very powerful, very patient, trust in his power. He is a fantastic fighter to watch. So accurate. Great left hook. Great right hand. A very sturdy base. When Connor's like, stand your base, Joshua Van stands his base. Joshua Van has a solid base. Very tight defense, but I just don't think it'll be enough against Pantoja. Pantoja is just a bit too good. Eventually, Pantoja's 35 now. Eventually, someone's going to have to knock him out. And it might be Van further down the line. I have no doubt that Van will be champion at some point. But he's too young. This is too early. He's too inexperienced. Because this division doesn't have enough depth. Van fought Royval, which is a great fight, but the level difference between Royval and Pantoja is a massive step up. You want to fight Royval and then someone a bit better and then Pantoja. I think it's straight from the shallow end to the deep end with this fight. I think Joshua Van will damage him. I think it will get exciting at times, but I think Pantoja will, in large parts, dominate this fight, and once it goes to the ground, it will be over pretty quick. So I think Pantoja probably wins by mid-round stoppage. I think Van will just about survive the first couple of rounds on toughness and will get a couple of nice shots off, but in general, pretty much a shutout and domination for Pantoja. But I am a massive fan of Van, and I will look forward to seeing what he does in the future after this fight. And as Pantoja ages a bit, I think this is if they have if Pantoja's still champion in 18 months' time and they do this rematch, I would be very interested in seeing it when Pantoja's aged that bit more and Van's got another 2 fights under his belt and a bit more grappling experience. Next one on the card after this is Merab versus Petr Yan. I think it's pretty obvious who is the safe pick here, and I will go with that one. Merab by decision, I think. I mean, Merab is the obvious pick. Whether you want to go by decision or not is neither here nor there. I think Merab has a Merab has a higher pressure style. Everyone knows that. He'll wear on Petr Yan, same as the first fight, but I do think Merab will do a lot more damage and push for the finish more. Merab's development has been, he went from an extremely boring fighter. I mean, his fight style, you can still say you don't like it or whatever, but it's nowhere near as boring as it used to be. He used to hug against the fence and deal almost very minimal damage. He now hugs against the fence and he tires his opponent out, but he does deal a lot of damage. He slams his opponents. He implements exciting grappling. He does throw a lot of shots. He kind of waits till his opponents are tired and overwhelmed. He also has kind of like what Khabib had back in the day, where he has like a kind of weird guard. He kind of like his hands are a bit all over the place. His head is a bit all over the place, and it just means it's very, very hard to land a clean shot. So when fighters like Petr Yan and Sean O'Malley, who are great strikers, who are used to fighting people who have very technical, sort of more refined styles, when they go up against him, it's kind of like when a experienced fighter fights a beginner on the feet and they kind of don't know what to do because then the beginner's not moving like the rest of the fighters. Not that Merab is beginner or has bad striking, but he just moves like weirdly. It's so to the point where it's so hard to land a clean shot on him. I do think he has a chin that can be exposed, but I don't see anyone landing a clean shot on it. I think Yan also doesn't have the one shot power unless he lands a knee to the chin or something to really take out Merab. I think Yan is also a slow starter, which is the worst thing against Merab. I think if you want to get Merab out, you got to get him out of there. You want to come out in round one and put it on him and start landing your shots, establish yourself, get respect, and then try and land some big shots and get him out of there. But Petr Yan likes to go out, feel out his opponent for a round. And by the time you've felt out Merab for a round, you've seen what's going on, you're already a bit tired. He's been dragging on your arms. He's been smothering you. He does so many weird feints. He kind of stifles his opponent. Like, Petr Yan will be confused. He doesn't know what's coming next. It's hard to know. It's hard to make reads on Merab. That's what it is. It's hard to make reads. And Petr Yan is a very clean, very striker. Very good grappling. Great balance and clinch work. I think if he does want to make anything out of this fight, he has to take advantage of the entries into the clinch and the exits from the clinch. When Merab is coming in, he wants to try and land shots, whether that's knees or elbows. And when Merab's exiting the clinch, he wants to try and land knees and elbows. That's the time when he's still, he's not moving around, and you can land those hard, solid shots. Yan's last fight, it's not even close in competition level. Merab has been against Sandhagen, O'Malley, Umar, O'Malley again. And in the meanwhile, Petr Yan has fought McGee. I mean, at least Petr Yan has been active in 2025, but this is nowhere near the same competition level. The one thing I would say, though, is since Merab has fought so many times, this is his fourth fight in 2025. Since Merab has fought so many times, the likelihood of him taking an injury into this fight must be at least reasonably high. And if Merab does go into this fight injured, I think it substantially increases Petr Yan's chances. I think if there's any fighter that can exploit an injury well and figure out what is injured, I think it would be Petr Yan. But yeah, no, in general, I think Merab probably smothers Petr Yan, dominant 5-round decision, just another shutout, probably more, maybe less dominant than the first fight between them, but more damaging for Merab. Like Merab puts more, like you'll see Petty Yan's face cut a bit, or um, you'll see a lot of swelling, damage to legs, whatever, stuff like that. But yeah, I think the key, I think really Petty Yan has to exploit the clinch and hope there's a bit of an injury in Merab. Try and land that one shot, because I think over 5 rounds, if a healthy Merab is very, very difficult fighter to beat. And even he's added submissions to his arsenal now. I don't think he'll submit Petty Yan. I don't think he'll be able to hold Petty Yan down for that long of a time. But I think he'll definitely be able to get him down briefly. Like when he's hold Petty Yan against the cage, pull his legs out. Petty Yan will get up. It'll be a load of effort. Merab will be pulling him down against the cage, grinding on him, and then it will just wear Petty Yan out to the time where. And Petty, the whole time, Petty Yan won't be able to figure out Merab's timing the way he can with these other fighters. When Petty Yan fights O'Malley, McGee, these other fighters who he fought, Sandhagen, they have certain patterns. You can kind of figure out their style, but because Merab's so herky jerky, there's nothing really for Yan to go on. So yeah, I just think Merab shut out, wins by decision. I think that's probably the safest pick of the night. There's a couple. That you would really think you'd fancy your pick to be right, but I think this is the biggest of the lot of them. So yeah, that's it. That's my picks for UFC 323. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.